Oh, hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. Let's talk about these new cards. Oh, baby. We have seen almost all of the Nilfgaard cards. There seems to be one held back here, perhaps for a final reveal. And now we're starting to see the big Syndicate cards. So, well, they're all big, right? They're all big. There are a couple of changes that were done to some cards that we already talked about. I'm actually using new footage. I'm going to be using all the footage from today, but I am going to just talk about Allgod right now. Because Allgod's provisions have now gone down to 10, which is so good. I mean, I was ready to run this card. I was ready to pay the price. So I do like that this is even cheaper. It means that the high price you already have to pay for something like Roach, which is like a nice little extra support for a card like this. I'm hung up on Roach for this card. Let's talk about these new cards. So we're going to start with Fergus var Emrys, the final version of Fergus. 7 provision for a 6th strength human aristocrat, the Emperor of Nilfgaard. Long live the great son until he wasn't living anymore, you know what I'm saying? So here comes Fergus. On deploy, give an enemy unit spying. Yeah. Devotion. That is, if you have no neutral cards in your deck, only faction cards, give 3 enemy units spying instead. So real quick, this card saw 3 different versions kind of presented to the public. This is likely, I do like this version the most because the devotion is actually usable in a situation, like you don't want to wait forever to use this card, right? I mean, he's not an engine or anything, but you don't want to wait too long to use this card. You want to play your seditious aristocrats. Oh, they have also changed, have they not? Now, it says deploy devotion, but the card reveal site no longer says that there's a devotion aspect to it. So I just want to quickly check. So if we're trusting this right now, seditious aristocrats do not have devotion anymore. So you do not have to play an only Nilfgaard deck to use them. Because before, they only worked if you were playing devotion. Now they work in any deck. I like that very much. Because, you know, the cool cards, like look at Braathens. Like, yeah, Braathens looks pretty cool. Devotion or non, spying or non. There's a lot of cool stuff here. Also, you'll notice that Fergus is in the background. I just realized this now. The artwork for Fergus is actually hanging in the background of this artwork. But apparently there is no longer devotion on this card, which just means you can play it in all Nilfgaard decks. So buff? I mean, I like it better this way. I like when there's more possibilities. I like rewarding deck building, but this just seemed like a restriction that clearly said, spies are only going to be good in devotion deck, because how are you going to play Nilfgaard spies without your old Impera enforcers? So I just like that. I like that very much. But getting back to what we were talking about, if your opponent is always playing around adjacency stuff, it might just take forever to use this card. And now that we know that there is a bronze card with the same effect, give an enemy unit spying, this means that if you were waiting for this adjacency trigger and you had other cards that give the spying status in your hand, it would just take forever to do this adjacency thing, or you just probably wouldn't get the full value. Now you are more encouraged to play this, you can play this card earlier. And as soon as there's 3 units on the board, you're just like, all right, I'm just going to play this card. Before or after, the seditious aristocrats are retroactive. So you just play Fergus whenever you want to start developing these threatening seditious aristocrats, which will just be, you drop them and they're going to be already at 6 at this point, and then they continue to climb. So I'm pretty sure every version of Fergus would have seen play, but if the version of Fergus that matters the most is the one that gives 3 enemy units spying, taking off the adjacency requirement is absolutely worth the 1 power nerf that this card received over the reveal period and now, present day. So does this card see play? You know, you're not asking a lot. 7 provisions, you get 6 of those points up front. Thirsty Dames, Vincent in a short weird round, seditious aristocrats, and more. Anything that wants to proc conspiracy. There's just so many reasons to run this card. The only reason why you would maybe not run this card is because you think that 2 Mage Torturers are enough for this effect. Because when they printed this card, and I see this here, I think, yeah, I mean, running 2 of these might be better, might be more efficient. It's a cool card, but I feel like it's there's a shadow cast on it now that we see Mage Torturer. All right, coup de grâce. We talked about this at a good length when it was revealed. So I'm just going to touch on the stuff that most things are now very, very clear. This card is great. Cards like Fergus and Mage Torturer means that you are never going to be starving for the spying effect on any card at all. So this card just looks good. Let's just say it just always triggers the Deathblow ability. So you damage unit by 2, Hengate's Sword this card, and copy it. You get potentially an engine or a very strong card, potentially with a Zeal effect, or perhaps something that you can protect. And then you can play it again next round. Damn, that's good. That's good. 10 provisions doesn't seem bad. Doesn't seem bad at all. And then there's Stefan Skellen, who can copy this. What does that mean? I'm playing this like 4 or 6 times in a game? Bringing it back in the deck, playing it again? I mean, it's doomed when you play it, or when you get it the second time. But I mean, this card's going to be a monstrous card. It's going to be a monstrous card. You're going to see it in all different, unlike Hengate's Sword, which you'd see here and there, maybe, who knows. This is going to see play, I think. Even in the worst case situation where you're just copying a spy. How bad is that when I'm playing it again? There's no commitment to playing it. I get it back. It replaces my worst draw with another card. This one. I think this card definitely sees play. I think it's only enhanced by the Mage Torture and stuff like that. 5 stars. And we got Amnesty, right? Yeah, Pope of Nilfgaard, just saying it, right? It's great just with Joachim. Just you hit Joachim, and you get to play another Joachim. That's amazing already. Looks good early game, looks good late game. Amnesty, boy, this card sure caused an outcry. This card at 5 provisions was certainly a good card. At 6 provisions, it seems a bit more fair, but it's still certainly good and will certainly see play. Sees an enemy unit with 3 power or less, boost it by 2 if it's a spying unit, right? But in Devotion, you're always triggering the conspiracy ability. But, hey, the conspiracy is pretty likely when you got a card like Fergus around. So who knows what you're taking? Who knows what you're taking? At 6 provisions, it's just harder to include 2 of them. But if you can get 2 of them in and you want to run... the thing is, you can't run Triss and this, and you want the Devotion to proc all the time. So giving the tactic Devotion is actually really cool design here, because I always think, man, tactics are great and Assimilate is great, so Triss Telekinesis is fucking great. So the fact that you can't really play Triss and reliably make this always hitting a conspiracy target, I mean, maybe that won't matter. Maybe that won't matter, but it probably matters. Devotion seems like it's going to be pretty good for spies. Amnesty Ardal. I see it. This is a control card I can get behind. I love control, and Seas is very strong control. So Seas on a bronze. Hey, some people have had some things to say about that. Nilfgaard's certainly shaping up to look really strong. Siegfried was the other card that was revealed out of the 4 cards that we saw on Tuesday. I'll just say it again that I think the biggest benefactor for this card is Beast Skellige, because it's a tempo play that purifies all units, and you're likely going to be running Purify anyway, and you already had Gremist, so you're never missing it. You run Germain, you run Crow Mother. You know, these are 5-6 boosts to your Heme Flaminica, your corrupted Flaminica at the end of the game. And are you really giving up that much? You're probably running Roach anyway, so maybe this is your 8-point play. It doesn't seem like you're giving up that much. Before, if you wanted to do a lot of Purify, you probably only could get a few of them off with Gremist. Maybe you wanted to bring back Gremist, but I don't know. You probably don't want to do that necessarily, especially if Corrupted Flaminica involves Gedeneth, and she's a druid, so there's that too. But it just means that you can never miss it. You're always purifying, always purifying. And this also purifies all defenders. It's a catch-all. It makes Skellige very hard to have statuses be relevant at all. Veils are gone, defenders are gone, vitalities are gone, bleeds are gone on your side, doomed is gone. It just seems like a very well-rounded card which is pretty reasonable at 5 strength at 7 provisions. You don't have to give up that much, except for devotion. And maybe Skellige really likes devotion, but I think that Beast Skellige could just run this right now, right? So devotion be damned. I would run this right now in Beast Skellige, and it would improve the deck. It would improve the deck without a doubt. So if there's anything else that's going to improve that deck, we're looking at competitive viability when the deck gets refined. Out the gate, we'll see how we do. I'll definitely try it. But I think that when refined, this card definitely sees play. We're going to hear this guy's voice line. It's going to see play for probably a bunch of other reasons too, but it really just does it all for Skellige. That's what I like about it. Can we get this a little bit bigger here? It's a little pixely. Morntard, I mean, whatever. Monsters, whatever. I mean, monsters were already able to do that, I think. I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference because Morntard still has all the weaknesses that she had, but Heme Fulminica takes advantage, you know? Mage Infiltrator, great artwork. There's great artwork actually on the Gwent Reddit as we speak. The Mage Infiltrator, oh boy, 4 provisions for a 1 strength disloyal unit. 4 provisions for a disloyal unit. We finally have it to flesh out a 3rd disloyal unit for Nilfgaard. No longer do they have the ambassadors, no longer do they have the emissaries, but the Mage Infiltrator is another disloyal unit. And it is reminiscent of the old Assassin, which after Homecoming became Assassination, another disloyal unit that was just turned into a special card. But this card is a bit more reasonable than the Assassin. This card damages adjacent units, both of them, and it damages them by 3. So you give your opponent 1 point, and you could potentially take away 6 points, which means that it's always worth at least 5 and potentially removing. But it does support the disloyal package in every way. Ultimately, it'll come down to, is this card worth running if you want to support the disloyal package? And I would say, on paper, that this is about as good as Dwarven Skirmisher looks to be in a dwarf deck. Do you want to run Dwarven Skirmisher in all of your dwarf decks? The answer is yes. If you think that damage by 3 is good enough with the potential upside here and there, but generally reliable removal, do you want to do that? And I think that you're going to want to run one of these, absolutely one of these. But I don't know about 2. I don't know if it's strong enough to warrant 2. But what I will say is that it is absolutely a great expansion card. Very, very relevant to the collection. Very, very good if you ever wanted to do Spy Tough with Singleton strategy. Because one of these is very, very good, and you don't have to sacrifice. You know, when you go to Singleton and you only have 2 disloyal bronzes and Raw Tosser, it means that you have now lost potentially 3 instances of placing a disloyal unit on your opponent's board at the bronze level. You only have Duchess, and you only have the Emissary. And, like, you know, you're not even wanting to run Emissary anyway. So it's just another ability to do that. But this card is probably very good because it's 4 provisions as well. It's not asking you very much. And if disloyal matters at all, the upside to the relevance of the status will be the thing that pushes this thing over the edge. I think that we will see a lot of this card. Boy, it's got good art. But good art does not always save a card that has potential. Aretuza Adept can attest. That card always has great potential and great art. Doesn't see a lot of play. So this card is very interesting, but there's more to talk about. We're going to keep talking about this card because we're going to talk about Braathens next. Now, this card, I think, has been underrated by a lot of people, but a lot of people think that this card is probably strong enough to run. Braathens is an 11-point, 4-strength mage, I believe. Yeah, he's a human mage, all right. Get your Dopplers in order. So we have Braathens, an 11-provision, 4-strength Nilfgaard human mage with Assimilate. On deploy, create and play a bronze disloyal Nilfgaard unit, of which there are only 3. So you will only ever see the Emissary, the Duchess Informant, and the new card we just saw, Mage Infiltrator. So the cool thing about this card, much like Avalok, let's say, is that creates in the title, creates in the text, but you know what you're getting, which means that you know when it's going to be a good time to use this card. And this card will have all sorts of different matchup situations. Because when you can play a Duchess Informant, not only are you proccing Braathens Assimilate twice, you're playing a 6 strength engine, but you are also taking an opponent's engine, potentially. So you're creating 2 engines. One of them's 6, and the other one's probably like 3 or 4. That already seems like pretty damn good. And if you don't need to do that, perhaps you need to protect something with the Emissary. On an empty board, this is still a single proc of Assimilate and a boost. So in both of these situations, now Braathens has protected himself reasonably. And the final situation is the New Mage Infiltrator, which is removal. At the very worst, again, still starts him off at 5, but in addition, gets that additional 6. So you're playing him for 11 at worst with removal? I mean, that sounds amazing to me. Occupies a very similar role to Triss in that you are creating something, or you are putting in a card that has multiple possibilities, all of them very good for you. Protecting an engine, removing an engine, or copying an engine, and playing an engine at the same time, I think has been very underrated, and most people, I think, commenting that this card is worth it or not at 11 is sleeping on it. Or doesn't see that this card, I think, is fairly well balanced. Because I think that this card is better than Triss in a card that cares about spies at all, a card that cares about Assimilate at all, and a card that cares about devotion at all. It's an incredibly good card. Design-wise, probably my favorite card for Nilfgaard released, if not my favorite card released for Nilfgaard. This card is very good. I'm super excited to play with this card, and this card alone pushes spies into my attention, right? First you had my curiosity. Now you have my attention. That's what this card has done for me. I very, very much believe in this card. I'm playing the shit out of this card. But if you thought it was over for Nilfgaard spies, you also get the Mage Torture. Man, if you didn't need more reasons not to think that conspiracy is going to be okay, status is going to be okay, and spies are going to be okay, why don't you just tie it all together with a bunch of great cards that give an enemy unit spying? Because this card is also an engine, and you can't poison it, and you can't lock it because it comes in with a Veil. I mean, on paper, as a value proposition, this card is superior to Nilfgaard. What is it? Imperial Diviner. But it's similar in a lot of ways. Where Imperial Diviner is an offensive Assimilate engine, this one is very much on the offensive. You are going ahead and playing a status. The Thirsty Dame is very happy about this. She's looking pretty thirsty. The Mage Torture, she's looking pretty good. This art. Whew! I mean, you kind of want to take her on a date, but, maybe just a couple drinks. Anyway, all jokes aside, this is a very good engine. It's an engine that comes with protection and an offensive ability. This card is, in a world where there is competitive bronzes, and Nilfgaard is living in that world all day long, especially when it comes to their own faction. This is competitive. If you care about status or Assimilate, like, you run Imperial Diviners just because they're decent in Assimilate if you're running Assimilate. But boy, oh boy. Portal, Ducal Guard, Ardfane Cavalry, this card, and everything that assimilates. You're adding Braathens. You might run Vigo as well for extra informants. All the disloyals. Holy shit, dudes. There's 2 different kinds of spies. There's Assimilate spies, and there's a whole core that supports that. And then there's Spy and Spies, I think. And I'm not 100% sure how that looks yet. I got to get into the deck builder. But I look at a card like this, and I think about how Assimilate normally plays. Assimilate can get out of control, It hasn't ever really hit the competitive viability of Harmony, but it has felt really good when it pops off. And this is a good one. This card is a good card. And the art, oh yeah, we didn't even talk about the lore. Yeah, I mean, no spoilerino, but whew, there's a story being told here. Braathens is better than Usurper. Now, it's funny because I didn't even think that you would ever pick one over the other. He's already done it. He's already become the king. You lead off with this guy, play Braathens, start proccing him. But is Braathens a better card? Pound for pound. Is it a better card? I think the only reason why I think that Usurper Emperor is probably a better card, I would not even think about it. I would include a card like this in a spy deck because it gives you 2 spies on the board, plays for 12 points. Like, it's so damn good, and is an engine that's protected. So I think that I just think you get more points out of Usurper, and you're more inclined to play him at the beginning of the round. Whereas Braathens, I think, is absolutely a fantastic card, and like, but you're playing him like the Usurper. I don't really feel the strategy around this card, depending on the matchup. Like, if you know for a fact that your opponent cannot do anything with the operatives, the ceiling for this card, I mean, outside of that situation, I feel like the ceiling for this card, it's pretty straightforward. You play them, you take them, you enjoy your buffs. Braathens encourages you to think a little bit more. It's always playing into the same strategy, but it depends on what your opponent is doing. It depends on the matchup, and it depends on the round when you're playing Braathens. You have so many opportunities to do different things. Whereas with Usurper, you're like, hold it for as long as possible and then collect your points, I guess. So I would say that I like Braathens more as a card. Braathens as a card strategically is a better card, but Usurper on paper is a more powerful card. How's that sound? Flaming Rose Footman is like Dead Eyes? Are you saying it like the card has like dead looking eyes? Stare into your soul. That is creepy. Maybe that's not what you meant. Oh, like Dead Eyes. Oh, that's what you mean? Well then, I certainly have a disturbed personality, you might say. Yeah, it's like Dead Eyes. All right, so we only have 3 cards to talk about for Syndicate, which is why it's part of this reveal. And because things are kind of changing, and as we can see that not every single Nilfgaard card came out, I'm not going to do like just full blocks of faction reveals like I thought it was going to play out. Because we are still getting, even though we're getting reviews that are favoring very specific days, and that is now very much up front, and we know what's coming, I think I want to get as many out as possible. So let's talk about these Syndicate cards right here. When's the next Gwent open? June 27th and 28th, and then this expansion will come out on the 30th. So
have you heard tell of the lad who played with toy soldiers, then went on to lead a noble order in its crusade against the dark that envelops the world? Upon closer inspection, oh, what lovely surprises await.
Introducing Jacques de Aldersberg, an evolving card that gets stronger at the start of each round. The card depicts Jacques' journey from childhood to adulthood to finally becoming Grand Master of the Order of the Flaming Rose. De Aldersberg excels at rallying fire-sworn fanatics, and in his final form lets you capitalize every time you play a card from the fire-sworn category. Cleric of the Flaming Rose is one of many new cards created to synergize with Jacques and flesh out the Syndicate's fire-sworn swarm archetype. While the Order of the Flaming Rose was founded with noble intentions, their shady dealings in Fistek make them a powerful new ally for the Syndicate.
But is there a reason that the priests come when he's a child and the soldiers arrive when he's an adult? Because if there isn't, Anyway, Jacques Miraculous Child. Oh boy. Well, we get to see, so this is all one card. So Miraculous Child, Jacques de Aldersberg, and finally Jacques Grand Master. Oh boy. The Salamandra, it looks like he's involved with. Those look like some mad mutants. So in all permutations, Jacques is a 6 strength, 11 provision unit of varying tags. I'm sure he's not a soldier when he's a child. He's a human, and then he's a human Firesworn, and then he's a human Salamandra. Okay. So in all permutations, he profits you 4. He's 6 strength. He's 11 provisions, and he spawns 2 tokens. As a child, he only spawns the Zealots, which are the priests that are currently in the game, 2 strength tokens. And then he spawns the Footmen, which we have seen right here as the new token. So he spawns 2 3 strength Footmen with 1 armor. And then his final form, which is devotion only, which means no neutral cards, he is very similar to the Usurper final form in that he is a 6 strength veiled engine. Still does all the same stuff, profits you 4, and you have to pay a tribute. So instead of a deploy, you got a profit and tribute. You don't have to spend the tribute, so there is that versatility, which ultimately makes it, I mean, you probably are going to spend that tribute in a lot of cases. So you could say that the versatility of the card is very similar to the Usurper final card in that you're more than likely just going to pay that tribute and spawn those tokens. But there are some situations where you maybe don't want to do that. Much like the Usurper might have some rare situations where they just want to go ahead and just buff the operatives, play Nilfgaardian Knight or what have you. Exploit the Tortoise. You could say that Jacques is also potentially interested in just using the money instead. Now that seems a lot less interesting because I would think that 4 coins is worth a lot less than 6 points worth in tokens. So I would say that this seems like a no-brainer, but it does mean that if you're playing something like off the books, that you will gain money by spending the tribute, which is always nice. But otherwise, you are just going ahead and looking at the same kind of value proposition as Usurper, a 6 strength engine that plays 6 additional strength. You ultimately end up with a very similar board state. 6 strength on your side, doomed strength, with a tag you care about, and a veiled engine. And whenever you play a Firesworn card, which now will seem to include Flaming Rose and all of the Firesworn cards we have already, boost yourself by 1. Whereas the Usurper was all about agents, Jacques, Grandmaster, is all about Firesworn. Ultimately, when you look at the 2 cards, you really kind of just evaluate them in the same way. Do I care about the devotion phase? And if so, do I care about the deck I'd build this around? Because I think that the value being offered for 11 provisions, much like the Usurper, especially when discussing if it was a better card than something like Braathens, would I play this card? On paper, the power is there. I don't see a reason why I wouldn't. So the Echo cards are looking super strong, right? So far, we've seen the Echo cards being super strong, and I feel like they seem like they could be the scenarios of this expansion. Very, very strong and likely very, very prolific cards. As my dog is very prolific with her barking. Does that make sense? Zoe, does it make sense? All right. Anyway, I think that the Echo cards, they could do, I mean, the Nilfgaard one seems very unique. You can't look at the Nilfgaard Echo card or the neutral Echo card and guess what the Syndicate Echo card is going to be. However, you can now look at these 2 evolving cards and start to guess what the other evolving cards could be. 6 strength engines, perhaps, that care about a certain tribe. That means to me that the Echo cards are going to end up being the landmark set to me, because these cards appear to be more like look at how Radia affected the meta. When you built a Radia deck, you got different benefits out of it. Northern Realms got the shield, Nilfgaard got the lock, scoia'tael got the saber, but you still had a lot of reasons to play Radia for your own faction's purposes. Let's say they created like a neutral card that was a 6 strength engine that was 11 provisions that changed what it cared about and what it did depending on the faction you put it in. It almost seems like instead of the Radia of this faction, we are seeing evolving cards for each faction. Whereas Radia changed in power level roughly, depending on the faction you ran it in, you still had to run a very specific kind of effect, and the worst case scenario is she was like 13 points and that was pretty good. You could say the same about these devotion decks. You have to run a certain kind of deck, but you get to run this premier card that, worst case scenario, is still a great point card. I don't think it's that bad because it means that there's going to be a similar opportunity presented to each faction for the devotion mechanic, much like a similar opportunity was presented to each faction with Radia. And I think that's more fair. And these Echo cards are going to give each faction a very unique way to play. So don't look at these cards and think stale bread. Look at these cards and think of it like an opportunity like Radia. I like that a lot. Now, the 5 provision cards, boy, have they been setting new bars for power level. Cleric of the Flaming Rose is a 5 provision, 4 strength Firesworn unit that profits you 2. I'm already like pretty interested. But it also has a tribute, Spawn a Zealot in this row. It has a tribute and a fee. This card does a lot now already for Syndicate. This card is already very interesting for a number of reasons. Because it has a fee and a profit and the Firesworn tag, this is a great card, whereas any non-congregate Syndicate that was even interested in running Collusion now has one hell of a great flaming a Firesworn card. You don't have to run that 4-point card with the fee that procs the token. Because this card you can play at any time. It's got a fee, it cares about your money now and later, and it gives you money. Fuck yeah, that's a Syndicate card. That's a Syndicate card to me. The late game potential of it is that you use its fee to give 1 power to each of the Zealots, transforming them into a 3 power, 1 armor unit in the Footman. Again, we already know the Zealot is a 2-point unit. So when you play this card, if you play the Tribute, you're playing 6 strength at 5 that procs anything that cares about Spawn, anything that cares about Firesworn. So it also means that if you want to care about Collusion, I know this is a weird thing for me to talk about, but I didn't spend my time with Hidden Cache and Poison. I did other stuff. So I think about this a little bit differently. But if you care about that Firesworn tag on the board, you've got 2 tags when you proc the Tribute. So this card definitely just, I mean, as far as provision wise, it's average to above average, but average is fine if the tribe matters, and above average is very good if the tribe matters. And this is the tribe. We already know it matters. So I think because he makes you money, has a tribute and a fee, and is a Firesworn unit, he caters to off the books. He caters to all of the Syndicate abilities in the stratagem because it generates money, and he comes into play with a fee. No cooldown. So if you have the board to support it, we saw on the YouTube card reveal video that he just goes to town. So you play Helvede, and much like Syndicate has always had in the past, we have another 5 provision card that could be a late game closing card, or a round 1 card, or an early game card, a mid-range card. It just does it all. It's a very good card, 5 stars. Like, I'm not actually rating these cards, but if you look at what Syndicate wants to do, and you look at what they've historically done for Fireswarm success, this card offers everything and does it all. Devotion means all cards. You can't have a neutral card in your deck at all. It changes a lot. There's a lot of considerations, and until we actually start building these decks and going like, oh, whoops, nope, okay, can't do that. Okay, well, if I can't do that, I'll just do this instead. Oh, nope, I can't do that because that card works with this card. Okay, fuck, okay. So I gotta do this. Okay. And then neutral is no longer filling out your faction's weakness, as it does. Northern Realms historically has had to use and rely on on neutral cards a lot. Anyway, there's a lot. Devotion and Echo are the cards that I think should be the main talking point. The evolving cards, I mean, they're going to be cool storytelling cards, and they're all going to be strong. And every faction is getting one. And the lore is going to be sweet, hot lore. But those are the cards you shouldn't be looking forward to unless you care about all of those things. The cards you should be really looking forward to are the Echo cards, specifically, and the Devotion cards, because those are the future of deck building. As it happens, all the evolving cards are Devotion cards, so there's that. But when you see a card like Smuggle, you think, oh shit. Because you look at okay, so here we go. We got a new Syndicate Crime. 5 provisions for a new Syndicate Crime. Look at this art. What a weird one. Smuggle. So he's smuggling in Fistek in a corpse? Yeah. This guy does not like his job. Profit 3. Spawn a Flaming Rose Footman in an allied row. The power level is great here. Because when you look at Dip in the Pontar and the Shakedown, both of those crimes, at least at the beginning, were playable And those were board situations that you tried to capitalize on. I need a unit to damage or a unit to boost, but I get my profit and I get my proc. Smuggle requires no board state and gets you the same value. A very, very good proactive card. An excellent proactive crime. Can be played now or later. One of the best crimes in the game now, just by that definition. I think this card is fantastic. That is to say, a profit 3-point crime that doesn't care about the board state, and in fact, develops a board state that could be felt favorable to you. Expect existing Firesworn cards to be buffed to affect all Firesworn tokens. Now, the reason why I want to bring this up, that tweet means that Procession of Penance probably cares about the Flaming Rose Footman just as much as it cared about the Firesworn Zealot. Unless I'm misinterpreting that, that means it's just one more great reason to set your board up full of Firesworn cards. And why would you not just play Smuggle at the beginning of a turn? The only reason why you wouldn't do it is if you were playing Intimidate, Portal stuff, Horse and Senior stuff, in which case you don't hurt yourself by saving it. It just gets better. The more you wait, the more you build around this card, the better it gets. And it starts out amazing. This card and the Cleric, as design-wise, are great cards. Super strong, very interesting, really makes me hopeful for the future. Jacques de Aldersberg, a powerful card that kind of confirms that every faction is getting a very, very strong devotion support card that is going to support the rest of the archetype. So if Northern Realms cares about knights or soldiers or machines or whatever, they're going to get a card that probably cares about a machine you play, that is veiled, that, well, both of these are token spawners, and there's no reason to believe, like, the monsters could spawn, imagine if they spawned, like, the monsters one spawned, like, Neckers or something like that, or, like wyverns, like, why, like, they're not tokens, but, I mean, the fact that they're just static tokens, like, there's static tokens that the board cares about, right? So Jacques doing Flaming Rose Footman, and the future board will care about the Firesworn cards. And Usurper is doing the operatives, and a future board will care about spying units. So for monsters, is it tribal based? Will it be beasts? For Northern Realms, will it be machines? Because that means we've seen all the tokens. Now it's interesting to think, will the scoia'tael one involve the Young Dryad tokens? Lots to think about, guys. Lots to talk about in the future as well, but I really enjoyed this review session with you guys. Thanks for watching and hanging out on Twitch for it. I really appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out and dealing with my technical difficulties. And if you're watching live, I'm not signing off because I want to watch this PlayStation event with you. But if you're watching on YouTube, thanks so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to see more Gwent content. We're going to be covering every single spoiler revealed for Master Mirror. The expansion's coming out on the 30th of June. Gwent Open number 2 on the 27th and 28th of June. It's going to be a big month for Gwent. Hope you're enjoying the game. And I hope you're going to enjoy this expansion. Maybe it's your first expansion. Let me know in the comments. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.